Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Wheatley with John L. Scott, and this is Don Snyder with
Hey,
Priority
everybody.
Home Lending, and we are back again. So last video we were talking about what makes you stand out as a buyer, and we left off with something that we wanted to go into more detail today, the difference between pre-approved and pre-qualified. And so Don here is going to take over and discuss.
Yeah, so the difference between being pre-approved and pre-qualified from a legal standpoint might be a little bit of a gray area as far as whether there's a specific legal definition that makes one specifically different from the other. And so instead of looking at pre-qualified versus pre-approved, what I like to do is look at those phrases against being pre-underwritten. So when you're pre-qualified or pre-approved, right, you've submitted an application and it's pulled your credit and we've evaluated that and kind of run the information that you've given to us through an automated underwriting system. And this system checks the situation that we've entered into the system based on documentation or what you've told us against the federal guidelines for qualifying for a mortgage loan. Right, and then that gives you kind of an automated answer that says, based on this information, yes, you would be qualified. And of course, we always run a little bit of a risk there because the verbal information that you've provided could be different from what the documentation is going to show to us.
Yes, that is correct. And we have run into that sometimes. And so it's not...
I think we both had customers who had that problem.
It's not
right.
concrete.
Right, and so that can introduce a little bit of uncertainty into the scenario. And so on my end, that's why I always ask for documentation before I write a pre-qualification letter, because no matter how certain you are, the amount of money that you make in a given month, the amount that's on your pay stub may be slightly different from the way that a mortgage underwriter is going to have to calculate that income for the purposes of qualifying. And so we just get all of that confusion out of the way up front on every pre-qualification.
And there might be some stuff on your credit that you didn't even think to mention.
True story. Happens all the time.
Yes, and that's not someone's fault. It's just stuff that gets forgotten, and that's why it's good to go through the extra steps so that everything's just out there on the table.
Exactly, and you can address that problem if it is a problem once you've identified it.
Exactly.
But then the next step to make this whole thing even more certain and to stand out to those list agents when you put in your offer is to be pre-underwritten. And that's where we request all of the documentation from our borrowers.
It's a lot of extra legwork, but it can be very good and when as a negotiating
it gives you a competitive advantage, and in this market I feel like we all could use a competitive advantage. And what that does is it allows a mortgage underwriter to evaluate your profile as a buyer and approve you for your credits, your income, and your assets. And so I think the easiest way to look at that is knowing that as a buyer you're approved for that mortgage, and you need a property that can be approved for the qualifications that you have.
Yes. I mean, when it comes down to it, if you just go through the basic steps, you ultimately can usually get a letter from a lender, and those are known to be accepted when you're writing an offer. However, with going that extra step, especially if you're in a multiple offer situation, it really makes you stand out. I also sell houses as well as a list agent, and when I get those offers and I see the specific letter that says, yes, this person has gone through, has provided all the documentation, that for me really stands out. It shows that this person is very serious, that they have been vetted, and they stand a much higher chance of actually making it through the process than someone that hasn't gotten completely checked out. Not saying that the other person wouldn't get through, but you have the better chances. So I definitely convey that to my sellers.
How do you feel when the lender calls you to say, hey, here's the difference between this and just a pre-qualified offer?
Oh, knowledge is power, and just knowing from that lender just what kind of a buyer we have, it personally puts me at ease. I actually recently was in a situation where we got an offer, and I was able to have a really nice conversation with the lender, and just having that extra information that was appropriate to share in that circumstance, it really made me and my seller feel a lot more comfortable about going through with the transaction, and it went beautifully.
Exactly. So this is why it's super important to work with people who have your best interests in mind, who are going to go the extra mile to make sure that you're really well represented. It takes an extra level of effort and care.
And patience.
And patience, yes. But in the long run, it puts you in a much more competitive position and a position to know that you're actually being really taken care of. And I think that's important.
100%. So, moral of the story is, if you're willing to go the extra mile now and wait to look at houses until you have that extra, sense of security for both you and for the sellers, because it's no fun for you either if you get into contract and then you find out you can't buy the house. No fun for anybody. So it's better to know now what you're getting into, and it's better for the sellers because they feel more comfortable and just makes for a smoother transaction.
I think that's a good story.
All
We're sticking to it.
All right.
Have a good week, everybody.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.